pray, oh Lord, we are congratulating ourselves that we don't seem to have any demons. And yet, we may be afraid to try. We may think we know. We may be afraid of embarrassment. We may have just given up and settled for brokenness and wanted you to be the superhero. Help us to be moved by compassion, to share your ministry of healing, to receive the new eyes that cast out our demons that show us far worse than what your glory shows. Give us those eyes and those hearts and those hands so that we become part of your solution. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. So today we celebrate a Sunday that was started by several dioceses in the East, one of Connecticut, Recovery Sunday, on the Sunday closest in the calendar to the birthday of the Reverend Samuel Shoemaker, who was an Episcopal priest who had a drinking problem. And Bill W. was one of his wardens, and Bill W. also had a drinking problem. And together, they realized that the principles of the good news, the message Jesus came to share, were for everybody, but that they would work if applied in a particular way in 12 steps for people who might have been hurt by other Christians or churches or other religions or didn't believe in God, so that they could find recovery, which is another name for salvation, healing. They invented the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the single greatest force the Episcopal Church in the United States has ever unleashed in the world. Small groups of people sharing with one another, holding each other mutually accountable, but each person responsible for fearlessly self-assessing how their own behavior could have been better, could have been more trusting and considerate of others and themselves. Because when we see through those demonic eyes that alienation gives us, whether we drink, or whether our addiction is to anger, or pride, or a paranoid imagination, or whatever it is, it keeps us from seeing what God wants us to see. And it holds us back from that prayer of St. Francis that says, let me go into that place uncertain and believe that your light will bring about something good. Today we celebrate so much. But just as we can congratulate ourselves, we may not think we have a demon such as Jesus cast out. We may think, well, I never had a drinking problem, or I never got hooked on cocaine, but they're no different in kind, those for whom that was their addiction to sin, than any other kind of addiction to sin. And sin is nothing other than an alienation between God and ourselves and our neighbors. So, one of my wise spiritual teachers, nearly all of them were lay people, not ordained, not seminary professors, but he, in California, said he gave thanks to God for the gift of having been an alcoholic. Because he said, I was such a pride, headstrong, self-reliant person, I would have spent most of my life deluded, thinking that I was sufficient, and that other people's failings were simply their failings. I would have had this whole moralistic, pompous view of the world. But my alcoholism, he said, broke me, and it gave me a different kind of heart. And it gave me a totally different understanding of what Christian faith was. This Christian faith is God wanting to help us be part of the solution, not part of the problem. There's a reason, though, that we don't know Bill W.'s last name. The reason is shame. And Alcoholics Anonymous created this principle of anonymity because they knew many people would be afraid to admit to others that they had a problem that made their life unmanageable. Now, I just want to point out, most Episcopalians are exactly the same way about any kind of sin, any kind of thing that would keep you from being everything God wants you to be with someone else or yourself. We don't admit that we have that problem. We're better than that. So we deny it. And that's another thing about shame. We try to push it down. And denying it could make us depressed. It could make us aggressive. But Alcoholics Anonymous solved this by upholding the principle of anonymity. So I really give thanks the years that we have a lay member of our church who's willing to share their story of recovery from addiction. Because I don't have it every year. We have a lot more great Christians who are Christian leaders at St. Clair's who have been through recovery, but they're not ready to be that vulnerable with the whole church to give up their anonymity. And we're not better than them. We're not all ready to give up our anonymity for ways that we fall short of the glory of God. So, Alcoholics Anonymous teaches us that nobody's better than, but everybody can help everybody else put their trust in grace. Everyone cannot make Jesus into the superhero who, if showed up, would absolve us of all responsibility. And instead, Jesus invites us to share in the healing ministry, the healing of relationships. So, what is holding us back is that fear, that anxiety, that sense of shame. I might make it worse. I realized in my own self-inventory, and I was wearing the green and the yellow the other weeks. For those of you who didn't know, we did this self-assessment as a congregation to help us. And I realized that when I think there's a strain in a relationship, when I've seen a little pattern of that strainness, then if I get back to where, I can walk up to the person and go, "Hey, Reed, how's it going? How are you doing?" And I say, "Great." And then we're real pleasant and nice to each other, but I'm going to stay away from whatever caused the disruption, because I'm afraid if I said, that time I knocked you over because I was annoyed with you. This is all made up, of course. You're afraid you're going to make it worse. You're afraid you're going to break the relationship. So you just stay on pleasant and nice, and you accept the alienation. But Alcoholics Anonymous teaches us that if we're willing to be humble, and if we're willing to rely on grace, God is there to help both of us and heal both of us. So I really give thanks for the great Christians in our midst who have been blessed by a 12-step recovery. And I really give thanks that we have the opportunity to recognize that we are no different than they are. And in God's kingdom, we won't need that principle of anonymity. And maybe we can bring that a little closer by taking that step out in faith and believing that each of us has the power to be part of healing and reconciliation and restoration. And then we start to see people and ourselves differently. And that's what Jesus is talking about when he throws out demons. Amen.